Today, I want to talk about leaving a place that you love because I think it's absolutely devastating when you have to let go of somewhere and move on from a certain place after traveling or living somewhere. It's one of the hardest parts of traveling, in my opinion, and kind of makes you question what you're doing when it happens. I've struggled with this ever since I went out of the country for the first time at 19. I went to China as part of a school program, so everything about the experience was set up for me to have a really special trip in every way. I went with about 20 other people from my college that I just met for the first time that would become lifelong friends. I was in a really safe situation because I was going with a cohort. I got to meet other college students from China and connect with people in this new place. I was young and just excited about anything. And I got to go somewhere that was so different from where I grew up that it kind of ruined other travel for me after the fact. And it was so great that when I got home, I was depressed for a really long time when I went back to go to my college classes in Ohio and spending a lot of time around people I actually didn't really want to be around. And that can be a video for another day because if I learned anything from that, it's that I wish I actually made an effort to be around people who I liked. I thought of that time as reverse culture shock. I was almost shocked at the things that I noticed about where I was from coming back after having that experience because it really changes your perspective. Anyway, that was the first time that I really experienced having this feeling of longing to be somewhere or live somewhere different than where you are in the present moment, and like the place where you're at is never enough. And even if it's being on this amazing trip in Europe or something, it's me thinking of somewhere else that I want to be or thinking that maybe there's something better, some better place out there for me to be. It's almost like it unlocked this human feeling for me that I had never experienced before, that I'm sure there's a word for it out there, but it feels like a very specific feeling. Always longing to be somewhere else and hating moving on from somewhere I loved, that caused a lot of turmoil. And I kind of questioned everything. I questioned if I was in a place that brought out a certain part of myself that I was happy with, does that mean that I should stay there? Or what parts of myself are more important to have that are brought out by different places? Why am I so connected to some places that I've just seen for the first time and not others? And what does that mean? Am I supposed to take this as a valuable memory or life lesson? Or am I supposed to do something about that? And this was before I was on anxiety medication, so I think that that actually had a lot to do with me questioning everything. But it's still something that I experience today. For the longest time, up until probably right now, I haven't been able to accept just moving on from something and just letting an experience be an experience. And I always hated when people said, you go through this to learn things about yourself. I hated that. I was like, if this is this situation and I love it, why can't I just have it forever? It's like I want to hold on to these things that I love and these places that I love 24/7. And experiencing a place for the very first time is such an addicting experience. It's like an addicting feeling. You hear traffic differently. You feel weather in such a unique way. You taste food differently. And I quickly learned after my first international trip that you can never experience the same place a second time in the same way, because there's no way all of the elements that were that way on the first time can ever all be replicated exactly the way they were together ever again. You can go back to a place, but it's not gonna feel the same. So the next and last time that I've had this dreading feeling of leaving a place that I absolutely love and considered living was when I lived on Magnetic Island last year. And I say lived loosely because I was on a working holiday visa. So I was there for 5 months. And when that time came to an end, I questioned if it should end or if I should find a way to prolong it. And I entered this state that I never expected of falling in love with a place, but choosing or knowing that I should leave it. And I didn't know how to move on from it. And it's funny because I actually hated living there for the first 4 months. And then in the last month, I let all my expectations go and I fell in love with it. I completely loved parts of myself that I had never connected to before, but I always kind of knew were there in there somewhere. And I struggled with this idea of, is this parts of myself that I can have, that I can take this experience and know that this is important to me and have it somewhere else? Or is it this environment that's bringing it out in me? And I really had to lean on family members during the time after I left to kind of tell me who I was because I couldn't even remember anymore. And when I said goodbye to my best friend on the island who was with me that whole time, I was so emotional while I was still on the island because I knew what was coming. Like I knew that that experience was ending whether I liked it or not. I wanted to keep prolonging it, but I knew that that was absolutely impossible because all my friends were moving, the season was changing, and I wasn't going to go through that life transformation a second time. I had already gone through it. I imagine this is what people mean when they say like leaving high school or college feels that way. Like your freshman year of college, you can never experience that ever again. And it was something that I loved, but I was actually okay with letting that go. But an experience like this, I just didn't want to let it go. And I almost felt like I was leaving against my will. I was at the will of how things turned out in the universe. So it left me with this dilemma of why am I leaving? Why am I not staying here and continuing to experience this? But my visa was coming to an end. I was waiting for it to be approved offshore. I had plans to go home to see family. I knew in my head that I should see family and that it could be the last time I would for a while. So I had to actually really use my head. And I hadn't done that for a very long time because when you travel and you're connected to places, you're not using your head. That's all based off of feeling. And I remember crying so much while I was there, after I left, and just being in this inner state of having no idea who I was or what I wanted to do. And I don't like to think about age a lot, but also experiencing that at 28 and thinking, how many more times am I going to have to experience this? And I really had to balance like head and heart because I fell in love with a certain lifestyle, but I knew that there were other things that I wanted to achieve in life, and living in that place wasn't going to get me there. I had a lot of hard life realizations at that point. So that's had me thinking lately because I've been looking at pictures of Magnetic Island and getting really emotional and really missing that feeling, even though I love my life right now. And it makes me wonder, what does it mean when you love a place so much? Does it have to mean anything? I know that people on here always say that I question things and overthink things too much, but I know I can't be the only one thinking this. If you love a place in that way, does it mean that you should keep returning? Or does it mean you should just move on and let it be what it was? Should you move there? Should you just accept it and move on? I think now, since that, I have become less attached to seeing new places, which I've seen a few new places since then. I went to Japan, Vietnam, and then I went back to Magnetic Island. And of course, as expected, when I went back to Magnetic Island, it wasn't the same. I was different, everybody else was different, and the island wasn't different, but I was experiencing it in a different way. I think that actually helped me close that chapter. But I think as I've seen more places and maybe got through those really hard times of experiencing that at different stages of my life, I can actually go to a place, see it for what it is, and then move on. But I also have worked really, really hard to get to a point where for the first time in my whole life, I love every part of my life. I love where I live. I love the people I'm around every day. I love what I'm doing for work. And I'm genuinely just happy every day. And that took me almost 29 years to feel that. I have never felt that before. So I think that I had to go through that feeling of leaving a place that I didn't want to leave to sit down and actually confront what I really want my life to be and where I want to be and what a place means to me. It used to mean having something exciting to do all the time and every day. Now it means being really steady and slow and having things that are familiar to me. Just because I love a place, I don't have to live there, but it still enters my brain. So even though goodbyes to places are easier and I'm excited to come back home after a trip, I still have that dread that I'm going to have that experience again. And let's be real, it's life. I am going to have that feeling again, whether it's a breakup in the future or I have to move somewhere new for whatever reason, or I have to make sacrifices for other people, or just whatever the cards may be. Nothing is ever going to stay the same. And I think that that's what experiences like this why it's so hard, because it makes you feel a certain part of life that you don't want to feel. And I think travelers experience it differently than people who aren't travelers. I'm sure they have that feeling in a different way. I just don't like accepting goodbyes. I don't like accepting that things end. And I think that's really where that comes from. And I haven't spoken about my time after Magnetic Island on here. I think I kind of just processed everything, like finished processing it, but that was one of, if not the hardest times of my life, because I was having a complete life crisis. And I can't be the only one who experiences this or has even experienced it just once. And I think that when I talk to travelers, this is what I want to hear about. This is why I like meeting backpackers, because you put yourself in the situation where you experience these bad moments to have the good ones. But I also think it's this very specific feeling that kind of takes you off guard because you don't hear people talk about it a lot. I think I know now that I don't have to be so invested in memories, but I am a Pisces, so I probably still will be for the rest of my life. Anyway, that is the end of that chat. I would love to hear about people's experiences similar to this in the comments. I actually just started a membership channel where I'm posting specific types of videos there that are members only, because I think there's specific type of content for certain audiences, and I think it's a really fun way to actually make like personalized content. So I'm gonna put a link in this description for that. Other than that, no other updates. I hope that you liked my spiraling thought process. Okay, bye.